ZombieTech. Welcome to ZombieTech, a forum for engineers, scientists, and inventors to ponder on the technologies needed to survive the inevitable zombie apocalypse.
She's Addie,
He's Whisker.
and today we've got someone who I'm sure many of you have bumped into before,
Yes.
making your rounds around the usual haunts of the community here. We have Adam, or Vea con queso, go
Via
with cheese.
con
Oh,
queso.
Via.
Hello.
Yeah. Otherwise,
Queso or Adam or AJ Fabio on Twitter. I've
Yep.
got a bazillion names.
yep. You are actually one of the few people who has so many different names, I think.
Yeah, I've got to settle on one. I think I might go Roy Eltham's way and just use my regular name.
Fair enough.
For the purposes of today's episode, I think we'll stick to Adam.
Okay.
Adam.
So, what do you got going on, Adam? I know you run a blog every so often.
Yeah, I have a blog at. I violated all the rules of picking a website and went with the Renaissance Engineer, which is a kind of a funny story how I got that. It's one of the guys at work, a manager at work actually. I was telling him how I do hardware and software, and he said, "Oh, so you're a jack of all trades, master of none." And I'm like, "Well,
Thanks, guy.
yeah, thanks. I kind of prefer Renaissance Man." And I was like, "Oh, wait, that's an idea. That's a nice name." So I kind of, grabbed it and had to shorten it down to therengineer.com.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a blog there that I have to update more regularly, but I am keeping up. I have my day job where I do radar and air traffic control,
Cool.
hardware and software. And then by night, I'm the Batman. No, I I do a lot of open source hardware and robotics. I've taught some classes on robotics to kids,
Oh.
and I taught a class of sixth graders, which was really cool.
That's cool.
And this was before First was around, so but I've done First as well, and quadcopters and pretty much all sorts of stuff. I mean, I have interests in music and photography. I spent most of the weekend running around Maker Faire with my Nikon and getting lots of pictures, which are up on Flickr.
Yeah, Adam was at Open Hardware Summit and Maker Faire over this last weekend, and I'm sure we're going to get to that in a bit. I really like the idea of Renaissance engineering. I like the idea of that because there's so many of us, including Addie and myself, in this community that aren't interested in any specific branch of engineering. We're interested in many.
Mm-hmm.
And it does remind me quite a bit of the Renaissance.
It's true, and especially in kind of the embedded systems field that a lot of us kind of dabble in the terms of the propeller processor and the Arduino. You got to know hardware and software. I mean, there's guys I work with that they don't know what a binary coded decimal is or how to use them in a program. They're just software people, and it's like, well, you got to know this stuff. And I explain it to them, but it's stuff like that. Knowing how to drive a motor or get an audio input into a circuit with a digital to analog converter, stuff like that.
There's no end to the number of things that are involved in doing just what we think of as very basic tasks these days, because there's been created so many layers of separation between the average consumer / user of technology and the actual metal that's doing the work.
Right.
So if I want to do something like record a vocal for a song, and that, to me, that's as simple as, okay, I take this, I stick it in front of Addie, I put a cable between here and there, and let the computer do the work. And I've never been satisfied with that being the answer, right? I need to know how that mic works. I need to know how the preamplifier works. I need to know how the digital the analog to digital converter works, how the file format works on the computer, how the editor works. And, I'm slowly but surely replacing every single piece of gear in this studio with stuff I've made myself,
Mm-hmm.
just because I want to know how it works under the hood. And I think
And
that's, there's many of us that are like that. It's not just enough to take the boxed solution and accept it.
yeah, and that's, I mean, something I've done. One of my big hobbies is radio control planes and helicopters and cars, and I've started with that. The speed controls that were out there at the time, they way back when weren't very good, and I was building new speed controls. Figuring out better MOSFETs that were used and better circuits in general, and things have caught up now with things like brushless motors and a lot of other advances in batteries, especially lithium polymer batteries.
Quadcopters is a topic that keeps popping up on this show over and over again. It's interesting how many people are working on those.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I have drawings from when I was about 11 years old or so of a quadcopter. And well, I mean, the design. I mean, people have been trying to do it for years. I think there's black and white footage from the Wright brothers era of that type of design. The hard part's controlling it, and I was trying to do it with an Apple computer and relays back then, not even transistors, and it never quite worked right. But it got off the ground, tethered though, with it wasn't carrying its own batteries. But now
Well,
with
it's not bad. Still got off the ground.
and things got better, through the age of mechanical gyros that actually had spinning, real spinning gyros in them. And now with the electronics getting lighter and lighter. But what's amazing is the RC people are doing exactly like what you were saying with the audio equipment. They're taking more and more of their radio control planes and helicopters and building their own stuff. You can go to SparkFun or Adafruit or any of the sites and buy an accelerometer and buy a gyro, and from there you can hook that up to a microcontroller and the receiver, and you've got yourself a whole radio control system. And from there, it's not too hard to add a GPS, and now you've got an unmanned aerial vehicle.
Yeah, and with tools like the propeller, I mean, you base this around a microcontroller that has a large, group of people writing objects to interface with all these different things like GPS modules and sensors and whatnot. And I mean, you've got all of the pieces, you've got all of the hard parts done, the drivers, that's the hard stuff. And all you need to do is write the glue.
Write the glue, and the tweaking is the hardest part. The PID loops.
Especially when you're talking about something that needs to go up in the air and not tip over and crash into a house or something.
Right. But when you really take it to the extreme, which like the guys at the Grasp Lab, which are those amazing quadcopter videos, I think that I gotta think that's really what got everybody into it, was the Grasp Lab videos of these things doing incredible maneuvers sideways and flipping over and everything. And even though they kind of cheat, in my opinion, because they don't have the electronics really on the quadcopters. They actually have cameras in that room that are hooked up to pretty much supercomputers that are controlling everything via radio control. But I think that's one of the things that really grabbed everybody's attention, and it's cool. It's a lot of fun, and they can be used against zombies.
Sweet. What now? I think we've done. We've suggested surveillance. We've suggested grenade launching, and mainly those two for quadcopters. What else do you think quadcopters can be used as in the zombie apocalypse?
Well, you don't necessarily have to kill them. One of the things they've said with zombies is they're very easily distracted. So one of the things that I would think to do is, if you see a group coming, from my other hobbies is photography. They have it's pretty easy to trigger a strobe remotely.
Oh,
So
I
you could
see. So you have a little zombie rave going on.
Yeah. pretty much, the quadcopters can lift quite a bit. So you get some batteries and a decent strobe light.
Little
And
disco ball.
oh yeah,
Sweet. All the
you could do,
zombies go for the disco ball.
now you can do that, or you could carry a few of them, and then if you can get the thing low enough to not harm them, drop the strobes on the ground, and let the zombies have their rave as you fly it away.
True. True. So let me ask, is it enough to Google for this information, or are there sites, like particular sites that, or
I think
projects that, you would recommend people go to if they've never worked with a quadcopter before?
There's a lot of information at DIY Drones,
Okay.
and that's Chris Anderson, I believe, his site. There's a lot of information there, but if you want to go on like a forum, one of the best radio control forums in general is RC Groups, and there's a huge quadcopter group there with many open source projects. There's a few propeller ones, there's some AVR based ones, and even some ARM based ones. And they just the one caveat there is they call it multi-rotor helicopters because they have to separate it out from the what would you call it, coaxial helicopters, which have one rotor above the other.
Not all quadcopters necessarily have 4 rotors right now. I've seen a few with 6, so it's probably a better term at the end of the day.
And you can do it with 3 as well. It's anything that's more than 2 rotors in line
Is considered a quadcopter.
Now, I seem to remember
Interesting.
you went to a conference of some sort not too long ago that was dealing with drone technology. Is that right?
I was at the AUVSI conference down in Washington D.C., which is covers all sorts of unmanned aerial vehicles and actually ground and water as well. And I was there on the aerial side, and one of the things there, the issues there is that they're dealing with is well, first off, the technology is amazing. I mean, we have machines out there that can do all sorts of surveillance, and you'd never know they were even watching you. Of course, most of this is military.
Sure.
Yeah,
But-
Interesting.
But it's really, I mean, if the zombie apocalypse happened, I'd definitely go and try to grab a few predators. And
what's a predator?
It's one of the military pilotless aerial drones.
Yeah, it's about the size
has
of a
weapons.
What?
So, they can fly it like an RC airplane over to the target and, shoot whatever they want with it. That kind of stuff. But, we're more interested here in what we can actually do. And that's really like that. We've actually had conversations about this before, Adam. They're trying to do some interesting regulations to stop certain groups of people from being able to develop drone technology. You were saying that you were into doing aerial photography with it, and then they changed some rules.
Right. This was back around 2004, 2005. When digital cameras finally got light enough to put on an RC plane, I was one of the people on RC groups that did it, and actually started a business taking pictures. I had a little downlink so you could see what the camera saw. Although I didn't fly via the downlink, I was flying by watching the plane, and I was doing some aerial photos for construction companies. They would want progress updates and real estate as well. And just about that time, the FAA kind of noticed what was going on. It also didn't help that people were posting pictures of they were flying over airports. And, oh, look, here's a passenger jet on final approach from above from an RC plane. So the FAA kind of clamped down.
Sure.
They didn't, I mean, nobody came out guns a-blazing or anything like that. But I kind of saw the writing on the wall, so I stopped what I was doing before it got out of hand, and and people got shut down. But they did stop things, and now if you want to fly a aerial, plane, even in a regular RC plane with a camera on it as a business, you basically can't. You have to get a certificate of airworthiness from a airframe and power plant mechanic and a whole bunch of waivers from the FAA. It's a lot of money, and it's pretty much they regulated it out of existence as far as a legal venture. Now, if you want to do it as a hobby, you can do whatever you want.
So you can still take pictures above.
You just can't
landing
sell
planes.
your pictures.
Exactly. Or you can't be doing that flight for money.
Which doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
That's how the FAA kind of works. And
What was that guy charging for pictures above? I mean, for pictures that.
Well, we don't know
is
that
that
he
just
was
an
charging,
example?
but Adam here was charging for his
When
services.
when I was doing it, I was charging.
Right.
The guy that flew over the airport wasn't. He was just a kid.
Right.
But the point was that the FAA was trying to clamp down on it, and they also saw what was going to happen, which is groups like the paparazzi get their hands on it. Not that the paparazzi really give a crap about the laws anyway.
So now I've heard about Google building a couple of these quadcopters to sort of enhance their ability to do their street view material. It seems to me like, considering that they're obviously a commercial endeavor, that they would be having to jump through all these hoops.
And I believe they are.
So you think they've gone through and paid all the fees and got everything signed off on?
Even if you do all that, you have to, every single flight, you have to have a waiver.
Plan?
Oh my gosh.
Not just a flight plan, a waiver from the FAA. It's not much different than if you had if you wanted to buy a MiG fighter or a classic fighter jet from, you need a waiver every time you want to fly that. So that's kind of the idiocracy of it, is that it's, we're talking about a plane that weighs 2 pounds. I mean, yes, there is some danger. You wouldn't want it to fall on somebody's head.
Well, in this case, I don't know if it is an idiocracy, because I know I, for one, don't want any companies, let alone, Google, who, is data mining is their job, flying remotely into my backyard,
Right. Well, I mean, Google, the companies like that, they're flying Cessnas anyway with really powerful lenses. So if they want to watch us, they can. To say it, but that's the way it is. And they have, it doesn't cost. I mean, for a company like Google, it doesn't cost much to have a satellite, turned and pointed. But usually it'd be more like an airplane, a small plane. I actually have some pictures of Microsoft's Street View car up on one of my websites. And they basically took the pod that they fly under the plane and put it on top of a truck. And it's some pretty amazing laser rangefinders and high-resolution cameras.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of that. I don't want to get too far off topic here before I wrap up. Just this one last question on that front, or point, I guess. It seems like the idea of you own your property, people can't go through it, but airplanes can go over the top of it, was settled about 100 years ago or so, right?
That I'm not sure.
Well, whenever it was, they pretty much said, yeah, people can fly over your thing.
Oh yeah,
Duh.
you have no control.
Jurisdiction.
One thing that I think might make people a little nervous about this kind of technology is that, I mean, obviously you've got the airplanes, you've got the satellites, but when something is 30 feet off the ground and it's in your backyard, that's like under the level of your roof.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's a different story. I mean, I don't think that should be in the jurisdiction of the FFA or the FAA to say whether or not somebody can fly at that level, right?
Right.
When we're talking a few tens of feet above the ground, I don't think that should be protected or, determined by that organization, because it's a federal organization.
Right. And I don't know that anyone's ever, I know 400 feet is a number that's thrown around a lot for the RC people. They're not supposed to go above 400 feet, and real planes aren't supposed to fly below, I believe. I'm not a pilot. I have flown Cessnas, with pilots, but I'm not a pilot myself.
That's cool.
But someone who is probably could tell you better than I as far as the legalities of it. But it's a similar thing to mineral rights. If you buy a piece of property, you may not own what's below it, which is another scary thing, with fracking and all the other stuff that's going on, especially here in New York.
Fracking.
That's where they they pressurize the ground to push oil out, and people are having their faucets. They can light their faucets on fire with lighters and things like that.
Oh my gosh! What the heck? Holy
Yeah,
buckets.
it's interesting.
Yeah. Gosh, don't drink the tap water there in New York.
That's way up. It's upstate though.
Basically, don't support the petrochemical companies at all if you can help it. That's the real solution here. Do other stuff, folks. Do other stuff.
I heard you guys were building a truck.
Maybe.
Heck yeah, zombie truck.
Zombie truck.
We're gonna have to. We still have some stuff to look up for it. But
It's a big project,
it's
so
a big
it'll take years.
1939,
Fun idea,
1940 Chevy truck, cutest thing ever. It is.
So
They are.
Eddie and I are thinking of building an electric vehicle from a 70-year-old pickup truck.
It's definitely that'll be a fun project. The one thing, definitely be careful of the weight.
Yep.
But the great thing about electric cars, and I know a friend who built an electric DeLorean, is off the line. They are
Torque.
incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
So if you need to get away quick from wherever you are for whatever reason, you may not get very far.
This is the
15
this
feet
is the
later,
zombie
putt.
apocalypse we're talking about, and you don't have time or road to get through those first 3 gears, guys. All right, the petroleum-based internal combustion engine doesn't make as much sense if you're trying to get away in a zombie apocalypse, because you want that torque instantaneously.
Either that or be so light that it doesn't matter. Like some of the motorcycles or dirt bikes.
I've said
Which that's-
dirt bikes a few times now. It's a good idea.
And that's something I've always, I when I was a lot younger, I read Stephen King's The Stand, which it's not a zombie apocalypse, but it's kind of a fall of society book.
Yep.
And he did a lot of stuff in there that I was like, that's what I would do. CB, the CB radio for communication, and motorcycles, because early on, people are gonna leave their cars on the freeways, so all the main arteries are gonna be clogged.
Yep.
So motorcycles or aircraft are pretty much going to be the only way to get around at all.
Motorcycles and aircraft.
Or
So
off-road.
then we'll have you build us a passenger airplane. How about that?
True. Yeah.
Since you know
Just-
both hardware and software, you could totally build one enough for the zombie apocalypse team, and then we could book it to like Aruba.
Oh, yeah. We just got to be careful of the zombies that try to cross the ocean.
That is true. That is true.
We talked a little bit about that last week in regards to Hawaii, and decided that maybe that's not the best idea to go to an island.
We'll see. We'll see. So then, from that conference, and I think-
AUVSI, it's the Unmanned Aerial Systems International.
there,
Did you see anything interesting at that place other than
or any interesting technology that's coming on to the.
There's some definitely some stuff that was real interesting was in the radar side of things. They have there's something called inverse synthetic aperture radar, which is ISAR. Basically, you can use this has been around for a long time, but they've gotten it down to the point where you can carry it on something like a quadcopter.
Oh my gosh!
It's using a radar as a camera, so pretty much you have this plane or a quadcopter or anything flying around, and you point the radar dish, which is very small. It's not even a dish. It's a flat, looks like a circuit board, and you can get a black and white image, so you can actually see the zombies approaching.
Wow!
From miles away.
Wow! So it's like an ultrasound, kind of.
Kinda. It uses Doppler shift and things like that.
Okay. Yeah.
So it is similar to ultrasound, but and it'll still work as a standard radar. You can track objects and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting. some of the stuff that iRobot's doing with their ground-based vehicles. To go in and check buildings to make sure there's nothing in them. They can climb stairs and all sorts of pretty cool stuff. More than just vacuums. A lot more than just vacuums. And some of the helicopters that are coming up. Now the large corporations in the military, they're rather than go smaller, they're going bigger, and they're basically taking regular helicopters and just putting computers in them, rather than.
That's a typical military solution to a problem.
Yeah, and
Make it bigger?
Yeah.
Or stick a computer in it?
We've got an existing infrastructure based on petroleum and large helicopters. Can we reuse the technology which already exists in our arsenal? Can we retrofit these systems into existing ones? Yeah, it's all very standard military ways of doing things.
Oh, we've got the spares. We've got this. We've got that.
It all looks good on paper that way because it's like, okay, how can we cut costs to make this happen?
Right. And whenever they try to do something new, they can bury themselves in requirements, and that's what happened to the presidential helicopter. So that's a whole nother story.
Yeah. Let's swing across on the completely opposite side of the spectrum because Thursday, I think it was, you were over at the Open Hardware Summit in New York City. Was it on in Manhattan or Long Island?
It was at the Hall of Science. That's in Queens. With the
good Chinese
World's
food there.
Fair. The 64 World's Fair and the 39 World's Fair was held. So everybody knows it from Men in Black, those weird buildings that they kind of blew up at the end. I think it was Men in Black 2.
Sure.
There.
Cool. Very cool.
Now, I know you ran into a bunch of people from the community there, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. I met Robot Girl, Erin. I met Mighty Ohm, Jeff Kaiser. Jeffrey Blum.
Jeremy Bloom?
I'm sorry, Jeremy Blum.
Blum, rather. Jeremy Blum. I think we're going to have him on here next week.
Yep.
Yeah. He's a really great guy. He was demonstrating his pseudo glove, and I actually got some pictures of that.
Cool.
He's a great guy, but he's a freaking overachiever.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how he has time to be in college. I mean, went
all of us look lazy, I swear.
I went to engineering school out here at Stony Brook, and I mean, he's up at Cornell, and Cornell is a reputation for being a tough school. I don't know how he has time to be an engineering student and do all this stuff. I mean, he's working for MakerBot and doing his Arduino tutorial for Arduino. I have to get it right so we don't get sued.
Yeah.
Saw that little nutty fiasco. Yeah.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah, he's definitely got a lot of stuff going, and it's good to see that. I mean, he has a lot of things going. Robot Girl has a ton of stuff going with her various robots.
She was walking around there with a educational platform.
Right. It was hooked into, I think, an Android phone. And it was used. She had a numbers game basically, where the robot was the user interface.
I think she's a Mac dev, so it was probably like an iPad or something.
No, that one was Android. She was using the ADK. The iPad was hooked up to another bird, her big green bird, that RoboBird.
Ah,
but she actually had both going.
Gotcha.
So she's multi-talented, I guess.
So then, from like all the stuff that you saw, what do you think is the most?
Well, what did you find interesting going on at the Open Hardware?
Some of the interesting stuff I saw would definitely be the electric. Some of the electric vehicles. I mean, there was a guy on a skateboard tank, and that was just freaking awesome.
Saw some of the pictures from that.
And some of the health stuff actually is pretty amazing too. I actually went the second day.
They had health stuff at Open Hardware Summit.
I'm sorry, that was at Maker Faire.
Yeah, we're not to Maker Faire yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We'll get there. I'm still interested about what all was going on at the Open Hardware Summit.
open hardware, some of the most the really interesting stuff would be even just hearing the saga of Instructables was pretty interesting. There was a really good presentation about some autonomous sailboats that are being used to clean up oil spills. And that's something I'd like to see more of. And just trying to think what else.
More oil spills?
Well, no.
More cleanup.
I think we're going to get more oil spills whether we want them or not, unfortunately.
I got a really good solution for oil spills. Don't
stop drilling.
Don't drill and don't transport oil in big tankers around the world. Do other stuff, people. Other stuff.
Time
for a change.
And that's something I'd like to see happen as well. But there were a few other presentations that were really good. I'm just trying to think. I'm drawing a bit of a blank now.
That's all right.
So let's see. We watched a couple of the presentations there, and there was one guy. I don't remember which group he was from. Maybe it was MakerBot. He was really charismatic.
Oh, that'd be probably Bree Pettis.
Yeah, and he was basically saying if you have any interesting ideas and you're not sure if you're going to be able to do them in the very near future, put them out there, publish them. Right.
That's his. His motto, you could basically say, is share or die, and I think I believe that in a lot of ways. It's true, in the sense of this isn't the way he likes to put it, but the way I think of it is, don't let things just die. If you're not using it, even if you're not going to work on it, share the ideas, get them out there, because there are people that you will spark ideas in their heads and get them going.
Them.
Yeah, and there's a whole lot of that going on in our community. Like, if somebody will have a little idea, they're not necessarily going to do it. They'll throw the idea up on their blog, and somebody else will take it and run with it. It's great.
There was another guy at the Open Hardware Summit. I forget the guy's name, but his company is Sentai.
Oh, 1 second. The other thing I wanted to say about that is it's interesting to me in a social context of what's happening right now in software and hardware patents. His idea can be taken a step further to say it's not just about sharing your ideas with the community. It is about that to a certain extent. And, it's good if you've got a good idea, share it with everybody else who's interested in doing that kind of stuff. That helps everybody. But on the other side of that is that it's sort of an asymmetric patent war. Because you've got all these big guys, buying up smaller companies to get their patents as sort of like this patent arsenal, like it's a patent Cold War is building up.
And a lot of that goes back to the patent trolls, and which that's the worst of it. The companies that all they do is just sue people. But it's not good on any end, and they're trying to fix the patents, but I think they're just making them worse.
Yeah, pretty much. Nobody has a really good solution to this problem right now, so unfortunately it's impossible to really talk solutions.
No.
The only person who I've really heard talk about it in a sensible way is he's an old professor. He works with the EFF a lot. What's his name? Anybody remember?
Nope. A person I'm thinking of is Don Lancaster. I don't know if that's who you're thinking of.
No. I know who he is, but I wish I could remember because he's such a good guy. He does work with like Creative Commons and all sorts of places.
Gotcha.
But somebody suggested while we were watching that what was his name? Bree, you said?
Bree Pettis.
I think it was John S. Suggested that somebody should get around to creating a nonprofit organization kind of based around what the EFF does, the Electronic Frontier Foundation.
But for patents?
Yeah, for like hardware and software patents, where if you've got an idea and you don't necessarily want to own it, you want it to be public domain, you can't really do that right now because of the cost of going out there and going to the trouble of creating proof of prior art. If somebody could come up with a foundation that you can submit your unpatent to, and then they have their team of volunteers of lawyers and whatnot that go about the business of like solidifying the legality of that idea being in the public domain, then nobody can ever steal it and lock it away.
I gotta check into that because the way the laws have changed, I don't think it even matters now. Prior art, I think it's just first to
Really?
file.
You're kidding me.
This is what's been changing in the last few weeks.
Oh my gosh.
And I can't speak on it too much, but because I haven't read it in depth. But I know that that was one of the changes, and it's not in the right direction.
Doesn't
Yeah,
it cost
honestly.
like quite a bit of money to just file
The
it?
patent search alone that you have to do ahead of time costs you thousands.
Yeah, I mean the whole filing process, you could easily spend $3,000 or $4,000 on. I know I actually have some friends who one of them works as a patent agent, not a patent lawyer. He's just an agent, and it costs a lot of money. And the most important thing is anybody who thinks that they should get a patent, don't go to one of those people on TV, the inventors helpline or whatever the hell they are,
Yeah.
because they're just
They'll
all
just
they want to
take
do
it.
is take your money.
Sure.
And, when a lot of people talk about this sort of stuff, it's sort of like in the spirit of like armchair politics kind of talk. But the reality on this show when we talk about it is I can think of at least 2 of our previous guests that own more than 1 patent each. So when we talk about it here, it's like this stuff affects the folks who are involved. We're all inventors, so patents kind of a big topic here.
It is, and there's a lot of people out there, and definitely not the guests on this show, but you can definitely get people call them ego patents. You can come up with a completely useless idea that no one's come up with before and get it patented. There's nothing to stop you from doing that.
Yeah.
In the end, you end up with a nice shiny plaque to hang on the wall,
It's,
but
Yay.
and something to put on your resume. But I mean, I don't have my name on any patents myself, but I've been a part of a number of them at a few companies I've worked at. That's one of the other things is when you work at a company, whether or not they attribute, you get attribution, or if you're at the time I was just a junior engineer, so we're not putting you on there, that type of stuff.
one nice thing about ZombieTech is that the folks at the patent office have already been eaten, and
Let them go first. They get
there's
eaten
no
first.
like legal recourse available towards somebody who wants to go, I made that idea before, you're not allowed to use it.
Right.
It's like, if I want to build this thing my way, I'm just going to do it now, which would be
Yeah.
awesome. But then, of course, there's going to be zombies trying to eat you, so that's not so awesome.
Well, we'll have our arsenal of super soakers filled with acid, so
Right.
Battery
work.
acid.
yep.
All
you
right,
got
so Maker Faire. I bet that was like crazy.
Oh yeah, lots of crazy stuff at Maker Faire. This was the same location, but outside, and inside. But there definitely were. We had Arc Attack with the Tesla coil music and all sorts of robots, and there was a guy with a spider chair walking around.
it. Cool. Like a
Oh.
hexapod type of thing.
No, this was more of a mechanical. They weren't individually controlled. Everything was chain driven, but it could turn, and it had 2 sides, kind of like a tank control almost. There was someone with an off-road vehicle for wheelchairs. It was kind of like a 6-wheeled vehicle you drive your wheelchair up onto. So that's good because it gives handicapped folks need a fighting chance to get away from zombies as well.
Absolutely. Equal opportunity here, guys.
Yeah, I know Adam hasn't read Neil Stephenson yet. You need to get to that. But there's a fictional character, obviously, but he's a veteran, and during combat, he was extremely badly burned, lost the ability to use his arms, his legs, his vision, everything. And this is cyberpunk, themed novel. So basically, what he's done, and he's taking a Hummer and built his own life support system onto the inside of the Hummer and basically turn the outside into his mobile wheelchair with, gun turrets on the top and loudspeakers and lights. Awesome.
Oh, wow.
Seriously awesome.
Very cool. It's only a few steps away from a Dalek, though, so you got to be careful.
Yeah. You definitely don't want a whole bunch of those kind of cyborgs rolling around.
Exterminate.
Gosh, I can't wait for the next episodes of Doctor Who to hit Netflix.
Yeah, and that was one of the cool things at Maker Faire was the Architect guys playing Doctor Who, the theme song, on Tesla coils.
Oh, that's great.
Nice.
Freaking awesome.
Very nice.
With kids in a cage. They had two youngsters in a cage that probably had no idea what the song was.
Now
they enjoyed it.
Not too long ago, I think it was you that was showing me a piece of electronic music history. They pulled a machine out of a barn somewhere in France.
France or England? It was in Europe.
I know the lady that built it was English, but I think they pulled it out of a barn in France. I think that was what it was. And this lady was a member of a group of musicians. She had splintered off before she built the machine, but the group that she splintered off from, I believe, was the same group that created the intro music for the original Doctor Who music. And that was one of the earliest examples of like electronic synthesized music.
Right.
Way back.
Yeah, and I mean, the oldest, one of the older forms of electronic music is probably the theremin. But this was the first time they were creating waveforms and really they had some control over it. And it's kind of amazing how this stuff always gets lost, though. Like the THX machine that did the deep note here at the beginning of all the movies.
Yeah,
that was lost. All sorts of interesting hardware that's just kind of disappeared and hopefully will come back someday like this one did.
Mark Van de Wettering and I have done a few little experiments on that THX style effect. Mm-hmm. He took a whole bunch of sine waves and detuned them all differently, played them all simultaneously, and then allowed their detunings to all drift closer to true.
Which is basically what the deep note does.
Yeah. And then he said that they used a sample of a cello or something to do it. And he was asking if I could do a sample of a lot of harmonics on one of our Hammond organs here in the recording studio. And I did that.
Oh, that's what that was for.
Yeah, that's what that was for. Mark was going to play with it. I don't know if he ever got it. Yeah, Eddie was down there sitting at the organ pushing down a couple of big chords for me. And I recorded it up here.
Oh, wow. Like with all the stops pulled out, I imagine.
Not all of them, but very specifically the equal, the fundamental twice, the harmonic, and then twice that, rather than, some of the thirds and fifths and whatnot. Gotcha.
Very cool. That's some of the stuff that I'm into. I don't go that far back, but a lot of the '70s synthesizers I have a lot of fun with. I don't own a Mini Moog, but one of these days I'll get my hands on one.
Cool. We'll keep our eyes peeled for you.
The history of electronic music is a very funny thing because it depends on your definition of so many things to say, okay, this was early or not, because you think of those synthesizers for Doctor Who, and that's like the earliest electronic music, but not really, because the Hammond organs that were electromechanical run all the way back to the 30s.
Right.
And you don't really think of those as being electronic instruments, but they are.
And that kind of ties into the whole Renaissance engineer thing, because a lot of the musicians were kind of Renaissance engineers because they were mixing mechanical, electrical, and as the years moved by, electronic then, and now even software is all pushed into the mix to the end of making hopefully music, but if not, then interesting sounds. I usually get the interesting sounds more than the music when I do stuff. But
that's all right. That's all right. Got to come up with those two.
One of my somebody I really like is Brian May from Queen, who his dad was an electrical engineer, and the two of them together built a guitar, and they were doing things with having the pickups in phase and out of phase. He has actually switches on it, and they heating the truss bar over the kitchen stove, things like that. And it's really that they got into the nuts and bolts of building an instrument, which I know you guys do, and I've done some of as well. And a lot of people don't know about that stuff anymore. It's the same thing, with the web. I mean, when I learned what a computer was, I was programming it. Everybody was programming it in school. Nowadays, it's here's the Google page. Go have fun. But
nowadays you got the young maker community is somewhat centered around stuff like Lego and Arduino kind of things, and it relates to what I was saying earlier about that there's layers between you and what you're really doing.
Right, and
the more you get into this desire to be that Renaissance engineer, the more you want to strip those layers away.
Exactly. And somebody who's doing that and is going to be doing a kit with that stuff is Wendell from Evil Mad Scientist Labs. He was showing off a Digicomp, which was, and now we're moving again back to the 60s. It was a toy computer, and you could basically do some ALU commands. It looks almost like a toy pinball machine. You drop marbles down, but it actually has little flip-flops and accumulators in it, and you program it like a computer, and it drops marbles for each clock cycle. And he's bringing this back out. I guess he got the rights to it, and he has the equipment to make a kit. So this is hopefully, his hope is that it can teach kids a little bit about what's going on inside these. You can open up the computer, and then you see the chips or the black box. What's going on inside there?
So let me ask, actually, just a couple of things. We went back to talking about Renaissance Engineer, and do you have any plans for your site? In terms of do you have any new projects that you want to work on besides the quadcopter, or is that mainly it? I mean,
Oh no, I have lots of stuff I'm working on. I've has a rep wrap in process.
Okay.
I'd like to get a whole fab lab actually set up, with some sort of. I do have a small lathe and milling machine for metal, but I'd like to get some CNC stuff built.
Okay.
Also, some electronics projects. Kind of working on some stuff with the Korg Monotron as a kind of explaining that. I'll try to do some videos.
Okay.
Hopefully, Korg won't get too pissed at me for doing that, but.
Well, maybe.
Where'd you get that, Korg?
I got it from the site Tymkrs.
Yeah.
I was like, Toymakers. That sounds very familiar.
Yeah, little shameless plug there. You can get stuff that we talk about on these shows at our store, and before too long it'll just be tymkrs.com, and there'll be a little link there, and you can find all this crazy stuff that we talk about.
But
I'm interested to see what Adam does with that, actually.
And I'd like to. I mean, I don't think anybody's really gone through an instrument like that, because you can do quite a bit with it, and it's a simple circuit, a series of simple circuits. And Korg was nice enough to publish the schematic for it, which was great. But when somebody looks at that schematic, there's a hell of a lot going on, and it can be daunting. So I thought it might be a good idea to kind of break that down and explain it, and actually get people to the point where they could build their own.
Right.
So
I love schematic analysis. It's a fun process.
Oh yeah,
this is why I like Addie, because she says stuff like, "I love schematic analysis."
But it is. It's you learn so much more about the different components and what they do, and you realize how much you don't know about how the components work, and then you get to look it up. So.
And it gets really crazy with some of the really advanced analog stuff. I mean, I'm more of a digital guy in general, but there's times I got to say, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, there's a lot of that too.
So,
So then,
but
any other projects before I?
other stuff I'm doing. I mean, my ultimate goal is, assuming society doesn't fall, is to kind of get the consulting business going, or
Okay.
do something on my own.
Sure.
I have a lot of ideas.
Probably do that even if society fell. You could be like a tech consultant
I'd be
for
happy to survive.
zombies. You'd be like, okay, I see you have a problem here. You want to eat my brains, and here's
That's just
my
not going to work
consulting.
out. There's only one to go around here.
Baseball bat to the head, Long Island style.
It would have to be an aluminum bat.
All right, Addie, we got about 10 minutes left, so why
we?
don't you jump into your grillum section here?
Okay. Well, first, I thought it was really cool that you do robotics and you teach kids and stuff like that. Is it pretty easy to get involved in one of those mentorship sorts of positions?
The first robotics competition, which is the big guy currently. There's a lot of high schools involved, and a lot of them need help mentoring, and they always need money, but they need mentoring help as well. And I don't have the website in front of me. I believe it's first.org, but
We can check it. Yeah.
yeah, that's one of the ways to get involved. What I did also is I worked through with one of the high schools, not high school. I'm sorry, middle schools. It was a gifted program, and
It is not that address.
it's not that address. Okay.
We'll see if we can find it.
Yeah, we can find it. That'd be good. But I was lucky enough that they came looking. I happened to be working at a hobby shop at the time.
It's
and,
usfirst.org.
yes. Okay.
So you were working at a hobby shop, and they said,
They were
Wanna
looking
come?
for someone to teach a class, and I said, "Well, I can teach robotics," and it was a lot of fun actually setting that up. And every time you see the kids get that look on their face where they understand an idea, like I taught them binary. I walked into the room and said, "Okay, how high can you count on your fingers?"
That's
and they go,
awesome.
10, and I said, "Well, I can count to 1,023 on my fingers." Of course, nobody believed me, and
right.
then from there was kind of a leapfrog into teaching binary.
That's cool. That's a nice way to do it. I'll have to figure out how to count to 1,023 on my fingers.
Well, Addie, there are 10 different kinds of people in the world. Those that understand binary and those that don't.
Ha ha ha. Okay. All right. So then,
But if
I
you
think
talk to
that's-
your local schools and some of the adult ed courses, adult ed groups or BOCES, like we have BOCES, but any of the those groups, they're always looking for educators, and there's a whole lot of ways to get into it.
cool. Gotcha. Thanks. All right. So these are the few questions now that I usually ask everybody.
Okay.
3 tools that you would bring that you would keep on yourself during a zombie apocalypse, or that you would bring to your zombie apocalypse bunker.
Let's see. I definitely want that aluminum bat.
Yep, aluminum bat.
I'd want my Leatherman tool.
Okay.
And because that thing just you can pretty much do anything with it.
Mm-hmm.
And does it have to be a hand tool? Can it be
It can be a power tool.
a power tool?
Yeah. I think we have Roy strapping some of the solar panels on his back, so.
Yeah.
Roy's going to be one of the power generator team guys.
Yep.
He's got experience with his home system.
It's hard. It's hard because I'm thinking of taking. I want my whole toolbox there. I want my soldering iron and generator, and being to be able to
he's
have enough
got a
tools to build
generator.
other tools.
Sure. Sure.
But I think if I had to pick a third tool, assuming I had power for it, it would probably be Actually, no. Even if I didn't have power, I'd take some sort of a saw, a big, a large handsaw, because you're gonna need shelter. You're gonna need
Yep.
and you can swing that around and hit the zombies as well
True.
if you need to.
Yeah. Leatherman's or Gerber or whatever brand of it you like have been popular, and saws have been popular, like
Seems those two are.
Sawzall, for example.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking of was a sawzall, and I mean, because you got to cut branches, you got to build yourself a shelter of some sort.
Yeah.
Assuming you're in a place that doesn't have a building, and
Well,
even
we're,
if you,
we're taking over a Home Depot.
and that actually, that was something I was thinking about because right here on Long Island there happens to be a mall that's Home Depot next to Staples, next to Modell's, which is a sporting goods store.
Nice.
In one building that's also attached to a radio station.
Nice.
So you have your,
I like it.
We could definitely hack a radio
like
station. That would be good.
I dig it.
there's a Five Guys burger and fry in there, and
Oh
all
my
of this
Gosh.
is directly next to
Power plant.
an airport.
Airport.
So
I don't know, man. That's kind of a.
You just need a power
pretty-
plant now.
Well, the airport has some power on site because it used to be it was the Republic. It's actually Republic Airport. It was the Republic plant where they built all the planes back in World War II.
Oh man. So they must have some sort of manufacturing thing still there.
A lot. Well, a lot of it is where the Home Depot is now. It all got torn down,
Ah, dang
but
it.
there's a few buildings left, and who knows what's in them.
That's right. That's right.
So that's where-
That's actually a pretty tempting location. But there's a lot of people in Long Island.
Yeah.
A lot
I
more
would
than
not
here.
stay on that island.
I don't know if.
Oh yeah, this would if I had a hole up somewhere, I'd be heading there, for the first night, and then as soon as I could get off the island, I'd be jumping in a plane and teach myself to fly real quick, assuming I survive.
Real
quick. All right.
I'd
what is it? The
get off
Hudson?
the island.
Hudson River on that side, or is it something else?
Now, we have the Long Island Sound to the north and the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean to the south. So
Yeah,
But
that sounds like it's cold water. No, real quick, learn to fly.
Yeah.
'cause
I'm not going to learn to swim. So I can
Not like
swim, but
that.
I'm not going to swim. I can't swim to Connecticut.
Not like that.
So
Okay.
we do have ferries that go to Connecticut if we need to. Car ferries to avoid New York City, which that would be my next option. If I couldn't get a plane, I'd be trying to get one of those ferries or any boat over to Connecticut because you can see it from the North Shore of Long Island. Get off the island into a less populated area.
Yeah.
Although depending on where you go, you end up in Bridgeport, which is a pretty big city to begin with. So
Gotcha.
you'd have to kind of go up the coast, maybe to Maine or something.
Folks on the coast tend to think of us here in the Midwest as the flyover states until there's a zombie apocalypse. Then they look at us as prime real estate. Because
Yeah, but
you
we're-
want to be as far away from big cities as you can get.
True.
And we do
Yeah.
have one of the world's largest hospital system here, so
That's good. And you're not too far from Canada, so there's
so
nobody
if all
up
else
there.
fails, zombies aren't gonna want to go up to Canada. So
No, they're all heading to Mexico.
all right, let me see. I'm trying to think. We have one good question. John S. came up with this, I believe, and he said, if you were in a library and you only had time to pick out 3 books for the zombie apocalypse, what 3 books would you find the most useful? I think we have, a minute, 1 minute, 2 minutes?
Yeah, a couple minutes.
We got a couple minutes, so I will settle for 1 book. What 1 book would you find to be the most useful in the
geez.
zombie apocalypse?
In the zombie apocalypse?
Yep.
The worst case scenario. Assuming a library would have it, but that's an entire book of what to do in the absolute worst case.
You're kidding me.
No, I have it. I
It's a
have it on
real
my
book?
shelf. Yes.
That is brilliant. I accept. Excellent. Worst case
It's a book.
scenario. I'm gonna
There's
have to pick it
also
up. Is it good?
Oh yeah, it's really good. Some of them are a little over the top. Some of the situations, but there's a board game that goes along with it too. But the book itself is probably on Amazon. It's a lot of fun to read.
Cool. Sounds good. I accept.
We'll check it out. If it looks interesting, we'll throw it in the old toy maker store.
Indeed.
Yeah.
All right. I think that pretty much wraps up this hour.
All right. It's been fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in and hanging out with us and sharing information with all the folks out there, Adam.
Indeed.
Oh, definitely. Anytime.
And keep us, and you'll have to keep us up to date on the aircraft
I'll drop
technology and you'll drop flyers.
flyers as I'm flying over your house. The toy maker's compound.
Sweet. All right, sounds good.
All right. Thanks.
Yep. And
So
I think,
we'll see you all next week on Thursday, as
Yep.
usual.
Yep.
Thanks for tuning in. You can automatically download this show by using the iTunes link on the side of the page. And you can also sign up through the RSS feed on your phone or your music player, and it'll
Correct.
just automatically go grab it for you, and you can listen to it on your drive to work or while you're exercising, whenever.
Correct. And if you want to check out Adam's information and follow him, he's AJ Fabio on Twitter. He is Vaya con Queso on our Savage Circuits IRC chat. And he is the Rengineer, THEREN, Engineer.com. And that's where his blog is going to be, or is, I should say.
Is, yeah.
Yep. So until next week,
We'll see you guys later. Bye.
bye.
Bye.